to create in JavaScript a class, create two instances of that class, and then display that information on an HTML page. Now, one of the things that's interesting about JavaScript is that even though you have a predefined vision for what you want your class to hold, you could dynamically just add some additional attributes to it. So, for example, let's go over here to this second person and let's add in an attribute that was not predefined up above. We'll say favorite hair salon. We'll say equals big red. Okay, so again, notice there's no favorite hair salon up there. Can we just randomly add it on and then display it somewhere else? Let's investigate and find out. So we'll come down here and we'll add some information onto this page. We'll say plus, and then the next thing is going to be, let's do a line break, and then we'll put on here favorite hair salon plus, and I'll just paste that right there. So the question is this going to work? Let's watch what happens. I hit save, I go over to the HTML page, and there it is. So what we learned from this is that JavaScript is pretty flexible about allowing us to add additional things here. Or as one of my colleagues likes to say, JavaScript is all about peace, love, happiness. It's pretty flexible in what it allows you to do. In other programming languages, it wouldn't let you do this, this thing that happens right here. If you wanted to have a favorite hair salon as an attribute of your class, you would for sure have to do it in some other programming languages up there in the class definition, but not so much in JavaScript. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about another idea. Let's go ahead and talk about methods or functions. Okay, if you've been doing JavaScript for a little while, you've seen functions or created functions. Here's an example of one. If I wanted to double a number, I could declare a variable. I could then access a function that I've written that passes in that variable, and then I'll return a value, and then I can print it out to the screen. Up here you see function double it, you pass in some number, and then it takes that and it doubles it and returns it. All right. And a function is a nice reusable piece of functionality when you're doing the same thing all the time. Okay, how could you use a function with an object? Well, here's a case where we might want to have a function to use with our class. So here is a class called account, and notice that this particular account has a number for the savings account balance and a number for the checking account balance. So this account technically has two different accounts in it. And we could create an instance of our account like this. We could give it a number and then put a value in each of those two variables. But what if you want to know what is your total balance? There's not an easy way to do this. Well, one thing that you could do is you could create a separate function like this up here. So notice how this is used. This function simply takes two different variables and adds them together. All right, let's go through the logic here. You create a template for your account. This is your class. You create an instance of type account. You set a couple of different values. Now let's do an alert statement. And a little pop-up on the screen. My account balance total is, and then I run the function calculate total. And for the first number, I pass in this value. And for the second number, I pass in this value. And this would, in fact, work just fine. But as you stop and think about it a little bit, you think, well, that's kind of weird because this particular function could now be used by pretty much any other programmer in the company, but this function really only is used in the context of this account. So And if everybody did this in your company, if everybody had lots of different classes and lots of different functions, but functions were oftentimes only written to be used with particular classes, then it would be kind of weird, and that's not a really good way to organize things. It'd be nicer if we had a way to more tightly associate a function that belongs with a class with that particular thing. Here is a way that we could include a method or a function as part of our class. This is a better way of doing our previous example. So let's look at this here. So first off, we have our attributes of our class, and then we have what looks like a function. But unlike how we usually do functions, where we start it with the word function, we omit that and we just write what the function is that we want to use. So we're going to call it calculate total, and in this case, this is what it does. It returns 2 of the attributes of this class when it's used as an object. Let's come back to this in just a second. All right, so down here we create an instance of type account. We set a couple of variables, and then here we're using that object. Alert my account balance total is account1.calculate total. Okay, looks good. But why is there this keyword this right here? Well, the reason is that when you're using objects, the only way that you can access their instance variables or their instance attributes is if you precede it with the word this. And we'll do some examples right now where we show what happens if you don't do that. So it's important that you do it. And we'll show you how it breaks if you don't do that. All right, let's go ahead and go back to our code editor. And let's go ahead and write all that good stuff. So I'm going to come down here to the bottom and let's write class account, and we'll say I account number, and I'll say this is the account number. We'll say F savings balance, obviously the amount in savings. We'll say F checking balance, and this will be the amount in checking. And then we'll say create an object instance method, aka function. So let me just comment on this while I'm typing it out. But when we use a function outside of a class or outside of an object and declare it with the word function, it's called a function. But when we put a function inside of a class to be used with an object, it's called a method. Now, oftentimes people get sloppy and they just call it a function of an object or a function of a class, and it does the exact same thing, but in terms of grammar, it's formally called a method. All right, so calculate total, and we'll say return this dot F savings balance plus this dot F checking balance. All right, and let's go ahead and use this now. So we'll say an instance of type account. Probably should capitalize that, but you know where I'm going with it. Object account1 equals new account. Let's go ahead and set the properties on this. O account1 dot I account number, and we'll just put in some random number there. We'll do O account1 dot savings balance, and this is what it feels like is in my account right now. And we'll say O account1 and checking. This was what it feels like is in my checking account right now. All right, and let's go ahead and watch this work. We'll say alert my account balance total is, and we'll do plus, and then do O account 1 dot calculate total. All right, let's see if it works properly. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And in the background, it pops up, my account balance is 25, which is what we predicted. Okay, what happens if we get rid of the keyword this? If I do that and I hit save, well, nothing seems to have happened in the background, at least as it relates to my alert box. If I right click on here and I say inspect, I go over to the console, it says uncaught reference error on line 69, F savings balance is not defined. So that's saying very clearly to us that it doesn't know what this variable is. And the reason is because, again, we have to refer to things from the object using this, meaning this particular object. Now, you can declare other variables in here, like f, total, and you could, as part of any function in a method, or as part of any method, you could add in additional variables, declare them, and put some numbers in there, and then use it, and that's fine. I could even, this might be a little confusing, I could even set a variable like this. But the thing is, when it's written like this, it's not referring to the variable that's associated with the object. In order to access the variable that's associated with an object, we have to, again, have that keyword this to refer to this object. Okay, that's enough of that. We'll move on to the next video.